It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I will be your host this morning. Boy, I'll tell you what. You know, some days the news is slow, and then some days it ain't. This is one of those it ain't days. You know, the level of I don't know what else to call it other than I guess you can label it under corruption. I guess you can label it under overreach. But the amount of malfeasance that is going on within every aspect of our lives today, and I'm not just talking about, you know, in these agencies and in the federal government. I'm talking about on a global scale, folks. The governments that are controlling the world are in a state of malfeasance that is so desperate at this point to retain power that you can feel literally by the moment the steel fist of tyranny being squeezed. I mean, it's incredible to me how much of it is actually going on and how everyone is just complacently sitting there willing to accept it. What's happening in the Veterans Administration is going to be one of our topics this morning. I mean, this is another scandal that's imploding with scores of deaths. Scores. Individuals who were played with, their lives played with, so that some bureaucrat could make their books look good. I mean, folks, how unconscionable can you get? We're not talking here about, you know, it's bad enough when people are stealing money. You got every agency out there, they're all spending, you know, money on these corporate, on these government credit cards that nobody holds them accountable for. That's bad. You've got Benghazi out there where people are actually have died as a result, and a cover-up of enormous scope. But now you've got an internal organization in the Veterans Administration. And I don't want to demonize the entire VA, but I got to tell you, I'm going to again draw the same argument that I've given you before on law enforcement, on religious extremism. If you are not willing to police yourselves, if you are not willing to expose the wrongdoing within your own ranks because you're afraid to blow the whistle, because you're afraid of your own role and position, because you're afraid to give up your job, then we have nothing further to really say to you. And we will remove you from your positions. And I don't want, you know, resignings. I don't want these people to mea culpa on a microphone. I want them in prison. I want perp walks. I want to see a guy who's being led out in handcuffs with a hoodie over his head or holding a newspaper in front of his face. That's what we need. Not once, not a dozen times, not even 100 times. We need to see this day in and day out. American citizens who trusted their government, and frankly, let's be honest, they're not given an opportunity to have other health care. I mean, they can go out there and buy health care on the open market in violation of the promise that they were given by our government to take care of their medical needs. But how unconscionable can you get? These are people that put their lives on the line for the nation. I don't care whether you agree or disagree with what they did while they worked for the government, but these are people that, with good intent, with loyalty and patriotism in their hearts, even if it was misdirected, even if it was misled, did the right thing by us, by our nation, did what they were expected to do, did what they were asked to do. And now we're allowing them to wither and die while they wait to get on an appointment list just to see a doctor. How criminal is that? So, before we go too much further, let's make sure that we're applauding the whistleblowers within the VA who are coming forward. Let's ask ourselves, and let's ask the rest of the country, how many more of you out there are whistleblowers that could expose what's going on in your own agency, your employer? How many of you are there in various agencies, various departments, bureaucratic organizations that could expose what's happening right now in our country? I want to see how many can step forward and say, I'm not going to go to Congress because it's going to get whitewashed. I'm not going to go and attempt to contact my superior because my superior is, for all intents and purposes, in on it. I want to see how many of you are going to be willing to step forward and say, I've had enough. And I'm going to do the right thing by my nation again. I'm going to stand up and expose the truth. Our second topic this morning will be Gowdy. Trey Gowdy has been slated and named. It's official now that he's going to be the head of the Benghazi probe. But I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to withhold my opinion on that until we see exactly how much authority and power this agent or this committee is going to have. And I'm going to say it again for the record. They're expected to have subpoena power. But if they cannot make direct charges and position those people to be charged by the court, and they have to go through the Department of Justice to charge anyone criminally, then the committee is a failed endeavor before it begins. Our third topic, climate change, agencies, and executive action should be sounding a klaxon for America. Net neutrality is being injected again by the FCC. Twice it's been rejected by the courts. Twice. But that's not enough. That won't stop this tyrant and his minions and the agencies that are under him. He's determined to destroy every facet of every piece of every diamond that he can find and gain access to through the executive actions, and deploying extra-constitutional administrative agencies as the equivalent of homicide bombers. He's lighting them up and setting them off in a crowd. That's essentially what's happening, ladies and gentlemen. Look, listen to the names of these agencies and tell me that's not what's happening. Tell me these agencies aren't being used as weapons of mass destruction. IRS, Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, the FCC, the one responsible for net neutrality for the third time, the USDA, Bureau of Land Management, Department of the Interior, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, the State Department. The State Department is what's holding up this entire XL pipeline. For what? Even the State Department came out and said originally, we don't have a problem with it. Now they're coming back out and saying, but we do have a problem with it only because Obama has a problem with it. And why is the State Department involved at all? Because it crosses the border between Canada and the United States. How insane. The NSA, the CIA, the National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO, NASA, the FDA, the SEC, the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the Federal Elections, FEC, the DOE, Department of Energy, FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, the National Labor Relations Board, National Transportation Safety Board, the NRC, the NSF, National Science Foundation, SBA, Small Business Administration, the SSA, the Social Security Administration, the ITC, the International Trade Commission. There are hundreds of these agencies out there. All of them are directly working against the United States. They are being swung about like double-edged, sharp, razor-sharp swords in a crowded room. Indiscriminate slaughter. They seek to do as much damage as possible. The goal is to create chaos, to overwhelm the system, and it is textbook Cloward and Piven strategy. I got to tell you, this climate change stuff and the executive actions that are coming out as a result of it, this report that's going to come out, 900-page or 800 and some odd page report of the dire warnings of climate change, it's all based on fraud science, commissioned science. No different than as if you commissioned a piece of art. I want you to paint a picture of my wife, the manor, the lord of the lord or the lady of the manor. It's made up. The artist has the opportunity to wipe away the wrinkles, to give her bluer eyes than God did, to make her hair look perfectly coiffed, to make her slimmer, more attractive, raise her cheekbones. That's essentially what we have in climate change science. Commissioned science. The writers, they're artists, crafting and manufacturing something with virtually, there's no real peer review. The peer review process in the entire scientific community is disgustingly corrupted in this nation. Our fourth topic, the utter failure of the judiciary when we need it most. There's a lot of people out there that are celebrating the Supreme Court case yesterday about how you can pray at a city council meeting. You see, this is like the respite or the eye of the storm. Every once in a while, you're given a little relief so that you don't completely storm the court with torches and pitchforks. Meanwhile, they turned down an opportunity to hear a major Second Amendment case in New Jersey that is arbitrary and capricious. And has rules that the state has rules that prohibit you from gaining a right to carry. The rules in New Jersey are so archaic, so arbitrary, so capricious, so unconstitutional, so inflammatory, so illegal. I mean, they say it's a will carry or a shall carry, right? But you cannot get that permit. Nobody gets it unless you're a political friend or a crony. Jefferson told us, you seem to consider judges as the ultimate arbiters of all constitutional questions. And this is a very dangerous doctrine indeed, and one which would place us under the despotism of an oligarchy of judges. And the Constitution has erected no such single tribunal. Judges don't make it right. Want proof? At one point, slavery was legal in this country. So was prohibition. So was barring the women the right to vote. Other nations, we've seen where they've made it legal for them to steal and take private property, imprison individuals, murder, ethnic cleansing. legal, approved by the courts. How much more proof do you need? In Phoenix, the VA scandal is just beginning to be exposed. The layers are being peeled back. New charges and a second whistleblower has come out. I watched a guy last night. I tried to find this video somewhere for you. I couldn't find it. I watched a guy last night. I think he was on Megyn Kelly, but I can't be sure. And this guy is a whistleblower who says not only should you ignore these people who say these lists didn't exist, I added names to them personally, and I can vouch for their authenticity. He's willing to testify. These 40 U.S. vets, 27 verifiable, 40 estimated, have died at the Phoenix VA alone, waiting for appointments, being hidden in a compiled list so that someone looked good on a report card. Understand the implications of that. So what you're saying to me is that you were so concerned about your career and your job that you were willing to allow Americans to die so that you had a good report card. And to make matters worse, when they were ordered twice not to destroy any records, they went in, even though they had been told not to, and began to destroy the lists. One enterprising woman, who's a longtime physician, came forward with more incendiary charges and the accusation that they've been shredding documents to hide the truth. Well, last night, this other woman came by and exposed the fact that there have been other individuals who understood that in the system there was another way to compile a list of who would actually come in and try to schedule an appointment. There was another scheduling system somehow or there was another scheduling application somewhere in the system, and they've downloaded that and given that to the independent or allegedly independent IG, Inspector General. I got to tell you, if this doesn't result in criminal charges of conspiracy to commit murder or negligent homicide, I don't know what will. This is second-degree murder. Knowing that you are putting people on the back end of a list for up to 12, 13 months at a time who are dying. Well, the argument will be from those who want to defend their actions. Well, wait a minute. We didn't know he was dying. We just thought he had a respiratory problem. But he died of respiratory failure 13 months after he came in and asked for the appointment. Well, we didn't know he was going to die. No, of course not. The bank robber didn't know that the guard was going to die that morning when he walked through the door. But he's held accountable for his murder. It doesn't matter that the guard didn't die of a gunshot. It doesn't matter if the guard died of a heart attack out of fear. What does matter is that that death was prompted by the person entering the bank with the intention to do destruction. And I have to tell you, these people in the VA are guilty of no less. 1,400 to 1,600 sick veterans were forced to wait months just to see a doctor. Meanwhile, you've got this administration out here screaming bloody murder about the Obamacare and how wonderful that's going to be to cover 35 million people. And then it turns out that at the end of the day, 10 years from now, we're still going to have the same, a different 35 million uncovered. What was the point? Meanwhile, you've got veterans sitting here in the thousands who can't get coverage. And this isn't something that just cropped up yesterday. This has been going on in the VA for decades. It's always been a hellhole. The cover-ups that are going on in this administration and in government in general, and I got to tell you, it all comes from the top. You know, when I used to work for a large corporation, and I've worked for a couple of them, I could always see a pattern. When the economy was good, when sales were high, and these are companies that were doing billions of dollars worth of business, there were no rules. Anybody could spend anything they wanted. They could take the most lavish trips. They could spend the most money on the most egregious, ridiculous nonsense. I mean, I remember, you know, being for my performance there, being sent on a vacation that cost, I don't know, $40,000 multiple times. Every year I was with Verizon, I was given the President's Cabinet Award for performance. 6 out of 6 years. I mean, those were vacations at Switzerland twice. I mean, you know, these weren't, you know, hey, here's a ticket to the Bahamas and a third-rate hotel. These were 5-star all the way. But when the economy began to slow down, those kinds of spendings stopped. They reined themselves in. The flow of money stopped. The egregious spending stopped. In this case, what you have is there is no profit marker, if you will, for government. So the spending never stops. In fact, it only grows. No matter how bad the rest of the country operates, no matter how bad the rest of the economy is, the government always gets more money. And therefore, the most profligate abuses are occurring everywhere around us. And the disease of these people is like the progressivism of a disease of an addict. They don't get better, they only get worse. They get deeper and deeper and deeper into the disease. The disease of abuse, of spending, of self-interest, of all of these things. It's so obvious. All you got to do is look. And Helen Keller couldn't deny the truth. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this Trey Gowdy to head the Benghazi probe. The question is, will it have any authority? If it does not have the ability, and I'm already hearing rumors that it won't, if it doesn't have the ability and the authority to directly charge criminally individuals, then I got to tell you, folks, it's nothing more than another probe by another committee. Because if they have to go through the Department of Justice and Eric Holder to charge anyone, this is a waste of time. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Please communicate with me directly. You can contact me by email. You can send me email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. We're going to tackle this Benghazi probe issue in just a moment. Stick with us. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. With us this morning. I hope that you're catching us live on our website at americasvoicenow.org. You can always catch the program live there on video and audio. We have a podcasting service that you can download these podcasts. You can download a copy to your phone. There is a phone or mobile phone app. You can simply go to your app provider, whether that be iTunes or whether that be the Google Store. If you're an Android user, you can download the application for Spreaker. That's Spreaker. Spreaker. When you download that application, you just simply search for America's Voice Now, Michael Evans. You'll see every one of the shows pop up, and you can listen to them at your leisure. You can also use our listen line, where you can dial in. If you're a long-haul truck driver, if you're someone who wants to be able to capture the latest program and you just can't be here at 8 o'clock in the morning, you have an opportunity to utilize our listen line, totally free of charge. It's area code 415-325-0725. You can call that program or that phone number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can listen to the show live during the morning, 8 to 9:45. After 10 o'clock in the morning, you can hear the entire program without interruption or anything else at your leisure. 415-325-0725. That's our listen line. And it's radio by phone. How cool is that? If you live in a low bandwidth area and you can't download our podcasts, or you can't capture them, or can't get the streaming video or streaming audio, there's a perfect solution for you. Area code 415-325-0725. You know, this issue with what we're hearing about the information that's coming out about Benghazi is certainly worthy of, and I've been saying this all along, I certainly don't have a problem with having another select committee. But my concern is that this will be a select committee that is an alligator without teeth. Why do I say that? Because if the House and Boehner gets to set the rules here, if he does not make sure that this committee is vested with enough authority to be able to make their own charges without having to refer it to the Department of Justice, then it's a whitewash. Because I can tell you right now that just like Lois Lerner and the IRS, you're never going to see Eric Holder, the ideological racist who is, so deeply in bed with corruption in this administration, you're never going to see him press charges. Certainly not with any vigor. If he does, it will be the most nominal charge he can get away with, and it will be prosecuted with no focus or attention or intent. It will be the most lackluster performance you've ever seen. And I got to tell you, I can't believe that we're sitting here with, for all intents and purposes, all the proof we need, and instead of criminal charges, we're going to, hold another FaceTime app for these people in Congress. The rumor mill is already out there that the intent of this thing is not to be able to give them the ability to make actual charges, that they will have to be referred to the Justice Department. I don't want to hear about any more, revelations of evidence until we can do something about it, because revealing the evidence doesn't apparently do us any good. I posit the argument that was given when President Barack Obama and every one of his administrative and cabinet members lied to the American people and said, and now we know beyond a shadow of a doubt, not even a reasonable doubt, beyond any potential of a doubt, that we were lied to about Obamacare, so it would get passed, so that it would be approved, so that the public would accept it. That was a blatant lie. And we know that the president knowingly, willfully, intentionally lied to the American people. We know that every member of his cabinet did the same thing. Now, we've seen the same thing with the IRS. There's not even a smidgen, he said, not even a smidgen of corruption associated with the IRS. And yet, we have empirical, documentable proof that it's not a smidgen, it's a coal shovel full. We now have empirical proof that the White House knew about Benghazi, and that they knew that it was a terrorist attack, and that it had nothing to do with the video. By the way, this vindicates the guy who went back to jail. I mean, not for nothing, but that guy's got a. I mean, I know they threw him in there under a pretext of the fact that he is barred from having access to computers or some other nonsensical crap. But the truth of the matter is, the guy's probably got one heck of a lawsuit against these people. And the truth is that in this case, people were dead. And the real function here of Benghazi was not, I mean, the cover-up was for something far greater than just the fact that the president was trying to get reelected. You know, I posted an article up there on the Daily Call from the Daily Caller this morning. It's up on our website, Facebook page, Patriot FB, so forth and so on, Constitution Club. And the title of the article is, "If the cover-up is worse than the crime, what was the crime?" I'm going to tell you what it was. And even the mainstream media is now bantering the term about. It was a gun-running operation. It was a arms deal to arm Syrian rebels in defiance of, one, the wishes of the American people, which throws consent of the governed completely out the window. It was arming a known and sworn enemy of the United States, which translates into aiding and abetting, which means that it was a criminal act against the people of the United States and the Constitution and the spirit of what a lawmaker and a government official, a person who has been delegated with power to represent us in some way, shape, or form. I mean, the evidence is out there. Even the mainstream media is no longer able to hide it. And I got to tell you, I'm attributing that directly to alternative media for exposing it. The mainstream media didn't bring this out. They did everything in their power to keep it silenced. Who brought it out were the unpaid, unthanked, unwashed masses of the alternative media. That's it, folks. They're the ones who exposed this. Judicial Watch was the one who was able to pull off what all these other, even Congress couldn't subpoena. I mean, they subpoenaed it, but they never gave them the documentation. I mean, folks, that's a criminal act in and of itself. The whole purpose of Congress is oversight. Congress isn't really there to pass laws. I know that's what they think they're supposed to do, but they're not there to pass laws. Neither is your state assembly. You see, I know I hear it all the time. Well, I'm a lawmaker. You're a lawmaker? Listen, we got enough laws. We need law repealers, okay? You're not a lawmaker. You're supposed to be a watchdog. And if what you're telling me is that you went up there to get in bed with the dogs and the fleas, and then you expect to come back home and we're not worthy, bow to you, you got to be kidding me. I heard a state assemblyman say to me one time, he just got elected, and he was holding this town hall meeting. And this is a guy who had no political experience before. And he went to a town hall meeting, and I heard him say to someone in response to a question, well, I consider myself a statesman. And I almost had to laugh. In fact, I did laugh. A statesman, first of all, you're 6 months in the job. That a statesman is not. Number two, a statesman is one who is, speaking out and protecting and defending their constituency. And you can't possibly have accomplished that in 6 months. And a statesman has, Hillary Clinton would be a perfect example of this. Here's a woman who's been in power for how many years now, and she's accomplished nothing. I mean, I could just hear it. It rolled off that person's lips. And I know that it was something he heard in conversation or some advice he got from some senior member who said, listen, count yourself to your people back home as a statesman. Anybody analyzing that would have said, excuse me? These people aren't statesmen. They're supposed to be defenders, warriors for right. And we have no one in our corner. The judiciary has abandoned us, and we're going to talk about that in our last topic this morning. The legislative has completely given themselves over to the dark side. Law enforcement is actively viewing us now as the enemy. Every administrative agency has a Hitler complex. And this scorched earth mentality and positioning that not only this administration on the executive side, but every one of his administrators and every one of his cabinet members and every head of every administrative agency, it is a scorched earth scenario, folks. They see and smell the end. Why do you think they are so feverish? Look, nobody can deny at this point that no one can deny at this point that we are beyond salvage. I mean, I understand the optimist viewpoint. It says, well, wait a minute, we're never beyond salvage. I mean, we have a time to turn this around. Only if we have a 100%, 180-degree diametric turnaround of the mentality and the spirit of what is happening in our country. And that's not going to happen. I mean, it has to be today. It had to be yesterday. It's not salvageable if the same people are in power. It's not salvageable if the next people lining up to get in power are the same people that are in power today. How do you call that a dynamic turnaround? When a company is failing, the investors and the board of directors don't sit there and say, let's keep the same CEO and the same executive team on. These are the people that made the bad decisions. You get rid of them. You find new people. We got an election coming up. The Republicans are salivating and rubbing their white, lily white, slithery hands together, covered in snake oil, at the proposition that they're going to gain power in the House and the Senate again. To what end? What have they given us, aside from the NSA and the National Defense Authorization Act and the Patriot Act and other treasons almost too horrific, almost more horrific than those given to us by the liberals? There's no solution here if the same people are in charge. There's no solution if the Fed remains the creator of money. There isn't one. There's no solution here to a debt problem when everyone's mentality is it's like living in a crack house. Everybody's smoking crack. You know why? That's the reason they go there. Look, take a crack house and run with the analogy. Normal people who get up in the morning, go to work, want to have and raise a family, take care of themselves, be self-reliant, self-responsible. They don't live in a crack house. You know why? One, because they don't want to subject themselves to it. And two, they don't want their children impacted by it. Only people who desire that eternal high, who desire to place themselves into that level of self-treason, live in a crack house. Why do you think politicians go to D.C.? Because they think they know better and more than you. It's a prerequisite of their DNA. Don't you get it? The extroverts in the room are the ones who were running the show. I mean, really, folks. Gowdy's going to head the Benghazi probe. But if there's no authority, it's a toothless tiger, paper tiger. You know, and the criminal levels of this thing are so obvious that no one can deny. I mean, look, guys, yesterday it came out that they had released some documents to the Congress in their probe initially. And those documents were so redacted that you couldn't really read anything other than the fact that it was a form. Judicial Watch filed the Freedom of Information Act and got the same exact documents without the redaction. You kidding me? And then, retroactively, they tried to classify it. What? I got to tell you, people. I mean, look. The idea that anybody up there at this stage in the game in Washington, D.C., and in your state houses, and make no mistake about it, your state capitals are just as full of debauchery, just as full of corruption, just as full of self-serving abuse and micro-tyrants as Washington, D.C. That's the truth. Everything else you hear is propaganda and marketing. Am I throwing everybody under the bus? You know, I don't want to make a blanket statement like that because I'm sure there's a handful of good ones. But out of, 50 states with assemblies and an entire federal government where the total number of people in the legislative areas are probably into the tens of thousands, if we could find 5, 7, 10. If this is all about self-service, you can't say you're in service to your nation. And I fear that we've reached the point where it's so ingrained and so embedded that the disease has taken hold and it's co-opted the cells. It's punctured the membrane and taken over the cell. It's changed the DNA. I don't think there's a solution here. Even though, we'll hear more about this probe. We'll hear, these people will get plenty of FaceTime on camera, and so forth and so on. But at the end of the day, if there's no example of what happens to you when you are doing wrong, then what have we really accomplished? I mean, what have we accomplished if all we get is more acrimony, more angst? I mean, really, if all we're doing is mental masturbation, but we can never actually say this person is going to be charged criminally for the deaths of these people, or this person is going to be charged criminally for the deaths of 40 veterans, then what's the point? It's just flagellation. And it's everywhere. I don't know, man. I don't know how to change it. I don't think elections in 2014 are going to change it. I mean, we thought that we might have had that in 2010 when the Tea Party, or 2012 when the Tea Party, but now they've become that which they abhorred. Many of them. All of them, I don't know. I mean, I can't say I know any of these people personally, but I can look at their actions and I can make observations that Stevie Wonder and Helen Keller can verify. You don't have to be a Princeton economist to look at what's going on in our country and what's going to happen with these climate change mandates that are coming out from the administration, which is going to be our next topic. You don't have to be an economist. You don't have to be a futurist. You don't have to be a commodities expert to understand that the laws of supply and demand matter, and that if you strip away coal and we'd have nothing to replace it, what are we going to do about keeping electricity prices down? When you base it and you say, well, we're going to convert them all to natural gas, that's great, but the natural gas prices are all over the map. Coal is not. And when you can manipulate the supply and the demand, like you can with gas, phew, man, oh man, oh man. I mean, it's just, this stuff is common sense, people. You don't have to have a political science degree to see what's wrong. You don't have to have a degree in physics. You don't have to have a degree in economics. You don't have to have a degree in anything. You can be a freshman in high school and just look at the situation and say, wow, that thing's in total meltdown. Just because it's obvious doesn't make it wrong. I mean, just because something is easy to see, just because it's clear, doesn't mean that you're not seeing it correctly. Stop listening to those people who are telling you, don't believe your lying eyes. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to tackle this issue of climate change agencies and the executive action that is being promised. And frankly, it should be setting off alarm klaxons across the nation. How much more can these battered walls and roof and foundation take? The country is about to come apart like a house standing before a mudslide. How much more can we take? Make sure that you visit some of our sponsors. We'll be back in just a moment. Make sure that you visit some of our sponsors, because these are the guys and gals that keep you listening to this program. Battery Station is an outstanding vendor and a great company for you to patronize. You can find them on the web at batterystation.com. They also have a phone number at 417-257-7799. They have hundreds of products on their that they carry that they don't have on their website. They have everything you could imagine or want for the prepper or the survivalist or whether or not you're a shooter or it makes no difference. Make sure that you give them a call and find out what they have. They ship around the country, and you won't find better deals than these folks over at Battery Station. BatteryStation.com, 417-257-7799. If you have an opportunity to, make sure that you swing by a Pizza Hut in your community. But here in West Plains, this is a Pizza Hut right here on Porter Wagoner Boulevard that supports America's Voice Now, individually. And the manager of that location is happy to do so. If you get a chance to swing in there today, it's reduced lunch day, and tonight, kids under 12 eat free on family night. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
All right. Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. If you're just joining us, you're stepping in about halfway through our program this morning. Glad to have you on board. You can catch America's Voice live every morning on americasvoicenow.org. You can also listen to it on Patriot FB Radio. Join Patriot FB, that's Patriot F like Foxtrot, B like Bravo.com. It's an opportunity for you to have a Facebook-like experience, but without the trolls, without the censorship, and all the nonsense. There's another great website out there where you can do the same thing. It's constitutionclub.ning.com. Constitution Club has a unique feature, which is that they've got a micro website set up for every county in the nation, all 3,300 of them. So you can meet and find other people in a county that you live in, maybe somebody that just lives across town that you didn't even know existed, who's got similar thinking and skills and would like to cooperate or work together with you to try to help restore and preserve our republic. Take advantage of those opportunities and join those two sites. Now, the Citizens Action Network is another great website. I encourage you to get out there. Citizens Action Network. Please make sure that you visit the folks over at judicialwatch.org. Why? Well, I got to tell you, Judicial Watch is a law firm that, and I generally don't have a whole lot of respect for lawyers, but these guys are utilizing the law to expose what's going on. These are the guys who were able to pull off this exposure on what's going on with the Benghazi issue. Despite the fact that Congress has had all this time, they've had all this power, the mainstream media has literally billions of dollars, unlimited sources of revenue and resources, connections in high places. They can't get it. Judicial Watch, this little group, goes out there, files a Freedom of Information Act, and shows up with the smoking gun and the bullet with the right imprint and the whole 9 yards. I mean, fingerprints on the gun, DNA on the trigger. These are websites that you'll find are going to give you, watchdog.org, another great site. Watchdog.org. Visit these sites. Use this as your source of news and information. Not, the mainstream media out there. They're misleading you. Reason.com. Reason.com. REASON. Great magazine. Hard-hitting exposures and exposés. I got to tell you, these are the sites that really make a difference for us as Americans. This is the alternative media you should be looking at, because they're the only ones who are telling us what's really going on. Everybody else is in bed with the devil. Podesta came out yesterday. I mean, this guy just, he's another one of these guys that is on the same level as a David Plouffe or a Eric Holder just a living, breathing example of arrogance, hubris, criminality, and ideology at all expense. Doesn't care how many die, doesn't care how many are injured, doesn't care how many walking wounded, stepping over the bodies, slipping in the blood with a smile on his face the whole time. White House advisor John Podesta tells reporters on Monday that Congress could not derail the Obama administration efforts to unilaterally enact policies to fight global warming. Let me just tell you what that statement means. It doesn't get much more in your face than we're going to pass all the rules we want, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. Nani, nani, foo, foo. We can do what we want. We've got all the power, and you can't stop us. I got to tell you, folks, that kind of juvenile, reveling arrogance, it's immaturity on a level and a scale coming from the people who are supposed to be the best and the brightest in the country, and it's abhorrent. The president is committed to using executive orders to pass regulations under the Clean Air Act to limit carbon dioxide emissions that cause global warming. You know what? Again, this is not science. This is commissioned art. That's what it is. It's commissioned art. This is all propaganda, folks. It is no different than what you saw coming out of propaganda masters like the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany and Communist China that you see coming out of these countries every day. No difference whatsoever. The only difference is in the language they're using, the words they're spelling. They're using English. Russia uses Russian. China uses Chinese. The message is the same. Their methodologies of accomplishing the indefensible, the unconstitutional, the unethical, the immoral, the illegal varies and differs. But is it any small consolation to you that it's the EPA who has stolen your land or shut your business down? Is that a consolation to you over the guy in Russia who was just crushed by the KGB or whatever the equivalent of one of their administrative agencies is, that was used as a weapon of mass destruction? That's what this is. It's no different. This is a dictator wielding a sword. You know, it's given a guy. There was a video one time I watched, and I know this is going to be taken by everybody as the wrong thing. They're going to say, you're a racist. It was this video one time I saw on YouTube, and it made the rounds as a joke. It showed these guys who were, I think they were Congolese fighters or something. They were somewhere in Africa. And they were all standing around with these AK-47s. This is a real video. And they handed a chimp or a monkey or an ape or whatever this AK-47 fully loaded with no safety on. And, you know, it shows the monkey playing with this thing, and, you know, he's looking at it and he's looking down the barrel, and, of course, there's no safety on now, right? And it's, you know, as he's playing around with it, suddenly he turns around and this thing starts going off, blop, 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 blop. And these guys are diving for cover. They're all laughing while he's playing with it, you know? And then suddenly they're all diving for cover. It was actually quite funny. My point is this. What you're doing essentially here is the same thing. You are giving an enormous amount of power to these people, these agencies. They have no idea what the outcome will be. They don't have the ability to reason, to logically think through to a conclusion the unintended consequences of their actions. No more than that monkey knew that if I touch this piece of metal, this thing is going to go pow, pow, pow. But if I touch that piece of metal, it doesn't. Monkey didn't know. Look at the lineup, the list. I mean, it's endless. There are hundreds of them. Most of them don't even have, they're duplicative. They replace, they all overlap and do the same nonsense if they do anything at all. Everything they do is destructive. Everything they touch turns to crap. Nothing is better after having gotten their touch of snake oil on it. Nothing. Show me one administrative agency that has actually improved things for you of late. Show me any administrative agency that has improved life as we live it. Oh, I know. There's those, Kool-Aid drinking ideologues out there on both sides of the political arena. And then there's the environmental extremists out there who say, it's okay to kill off millions of humans as long as the planet's saved. Listen, get out of here with that nonsense. I mean, come on. If it was you and your family and your children, you wouldn't be thinking so rashly, would you? It's that stupidity that has no basis in reality. I mean, if you're so willing to see human beings killed off so that the planet can survive, well, let's start with you. Take you and your entire family, go find a high bridge somewhere and jump. You want to reduce the carbon footprint? Show us by example how it's done. What kind of idiocy is that? It's okay, though, as long as it's other people, right? Really? I mean, you can't even boil that down to some kind of a rationalized kernel. There's no nucleus to that thinking. But they're the ones who are pushing all the buttons. They're the ones who get all the attention. They're the ones who are gaining traction. While the rest of us are sitting here just paying for it. Not only paying for it, fiscally and financially, but we're paying for it with the destruction of our society. We're paying for it with the constant, the psychological abuse that's going on right now is just tantamount to torture. Listen to the lineup: the IRS, the DHS, the FCC, the USDA, the BLM, the Interior, the EPA, State Department, NSA, FBI, CIA, the NRO, the NASA, NASA, the FDA, the SEC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, Department of Energy, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the FTC, National Labor Relations Board, National Transportation Safety Board, OSHA, NRC. What the NSF, Small Business Administration. What are they doing for small businesses? Find out. International Trade Commission. What are they doing? Well, they're trying to give us the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the TTIP, another trade agreement that will make NAFTA and CAFTA look like two kids playing marbles instead of World War II. Look, find me one thing any of these agencies do. What does the EPA actually accomplish for you of late? Ask yourself that question. And how can they accomplish anything good, mired in corruption so deep that even their nose is not above the stench and the pile of excrement that they've created? Look, people, these executive actions should be sending klaxons of alarm through the nation. Alarm bells should be flying, should be sounded every morning from every church, from every synagogue, from every city hall. Those should be alarm bells ringing. The number of flags thrown on these plays should replicate a confetti drop after the Super Bowl. The sky should be full of confetti of flags thrown on these plays. Where are they all? You don't have to be anything other than just an observer. You don't even have to be a particularly astute observer to look around you. And, I mean, look behind you and look at the scorched earth. They're laying waste to an entire nation. They are laying waste to a nation. 300 million of us. And to what end? For what purpose? What is the accomplishment? What's the end goal? How is laying waste to everything that we know to benefit us? How is laying waste to our financial system, our healthcare system, our energy system, our foreign policy, becoming an oppressive imperialist, how is that benefiting to us? Giving away our jobs, wiping out our industries, empowering our foreign enemies, aiding and abetting known sworn enemies of the nation. Show me one benefit that comes from that. Just one. Short term, long term, midterm. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Show me any. There aren't any. This is indiscriminate murder by psychopaths. Murder of a nation. The victim is 300 million of us. This isn't making us stronger. It's not making us better. It's not improving our opportunities. It's not improving our odds of survivability. I mean, for crimini's sake, save the planet at the expense of the lives of all the people on it? What's the point? I know there are those who actually believe that, humans are a virus on the surface of Earth. And I mean, and maybe we are, but we're sentient virus, okay? And before you indiscriminately decide that it's okay for you to make the decision for all of us, we might have something to say about it. Thanks very much. I mean, the incredible, it's beyond my comprehension that average, everyday Americans are not just saying, that's it, we're done, we quit, we're on strike. We're on strike about everything. We're doing nothing. We're all going to go. We're going to stage a massive national sit-in that says nobody does nothing, nobody goes nowhere. That's it. We're all finished. We're done. We don't even have a list of demands. We've just had it. We're done. I mean, really. What else is going to resolve this problem? What, the same people? You mean Trey and John Boehner and John McCain? You mean Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid? You mean Sally Jewell from the Department of the Interior? You mean Jay Johnson from Homeland Security? You mean these people are going to? You mean Podesta? He's going to solve the problem. He is the problem. These people can't solve anything. They're the creators of chaos. And that is their real goal. From chaos, order. The only problem is it'll be rewritten as the order which they wish to see. And I promise you, that won't be in your best interest either. Power is an addiction, like any other addiction. And someone who begins, drinking excessively in their life doesn't suddenly, go from 1 or 2 martinis a day to 6 martinis a day over the course of a couple of months or years or whatever it takes them to achieve. I mean, it's a progressive disease. It's a progressive disease. And an alcoholic or a terrible heroin addict doesn't suddenly wake up and say, today, I'm clean. Today, I'm going to do all the right things. I'm going to go out and get a job, and I am never going to use drugs again. I'm never going to drink again. And suddenly, their wife comes back, and their dog, loves them again, and they get their home back. I mean, is that how it works in reality, ladies and gentlemen? Is it? Or does somebody have to make amends, pay the price for their actions? Here's the problem. The people who are going to pay the price for these people's actions, that be you. There's no amends for what they're doing. And there's no forgiveness for, you see, these aren't people who want to commit suicide. These are people who want to commit suicide and take everybody else with them. They're homicide bombers. Not in a literal sense. In a political sense. They don't care. They just don't care. It's either I achieve my goal or I go down in flames and I take everybody with me. Who gives them that power? Where do they abscond that authority from? Goodness gracious. We're going to take a break. When we come back, the utter failure of the judiciary system when we need it most. Don't be lulled into a false sense of complacency about some prayer ruling from the Supreme Court. That's small consolation for the dozens of cases that have been accomplished of recent vintage that have destroyed more of our fabric than I care to admit. We'll be right back. The other day, the Supreme Court refused to hear a major Second Amendment case. I would draw the analogy to a slave master who applies daily beatings to you and your family. With a whip, nails studded, and those flails. And, I don't know, maybe once every month. The slave master says, here's an extra bowl of soup. But the following day, the beatings commence again. Does it make up for them? Does it diminish the damage done? I don't think so. The Supreme Court hasn't heard a Second Amendment case since Heller in 2008 and McDonald versus Chicago in 2010. It's now 2014. Don't tell me guns haven't been in the forefront of the political dialogue. They were just handed a case they refused to hear. This is a case out of New Jersey. Having come and lived in New Jersey for a very long period of time, I can tell you that the rules of right to carry in New Jersey are a joke. When you read them, I mean, all 50 states have a right to carry law. All of them. Did you know that? Even New York City has a right to carry law. Even New Jersey has a right to carry law. Try to get one of those permits, however, and you got a better chance of winning the lottery without buying a ticket. Literally. The way it works is you have to request a right to carry permit. You can apply for one, but nobody, and I mean nobody, gets one. It's like that little midget from The Wizard of Oz. Nobody gets to see the great wizard. No how. I mean, really. Just to buy a gun in New Jersey, you have to get something called a firearms identification card. And to obtain that, you have to go down to your local police department and you have to submit yourself, first of all, an application, which is they run a criminal background check on you. And then your local police chief has the right to arbitrarily and capriciously deny you even the right to buy a gun just by saying, "No, I don't think so." Assuming you get past the scrutiny and the gamut and the juggernaut and the I can't think of the word. Anyway, the point is you now get your permit. You've been fingerprinted, by the way. On your firearms identification card is a fingerprint. Yours. Just exercise your Second Amendment right. Oh, you want to buy a BB gun? Well, you can't have a BB gun unless you fill out a Form 4. Form 4473, excuse me. You have to go through a background check through the ATF to buy a BB gun. Think I'm kidding you? I'm not. Slingshots are illegal. Cannot own a slingshot. Look, when I was a kid, growing up in New Jersey, we used to climb a tree to get to a forked branch that was, the perfect forked branch in our opinion, and it was 20 feet high. It didn't matter. We would risk our lives to get it. Cut it down with a saw and sit there with our pocket knife and whittle it away and clean the bark off of it and take an old bicycle tire and make a strap out of it. Get caught with a slingshot in New Jersey? It's considered a deadly weapon. Think I'm kidding? Go look it up. We haven't even gotten to the carry idea yet. This is just obtaining one. Can't hunt with a rifle in New Jersey. Illegal. Shotgun only. Now you want to buy a pistol. Okay, now you got to go down and you got to apply to that same police chief, and you've got to beg his permission and fill out a form 5 layers deep, 5 times. Not triplicate, whatever the heck 5 is. You think I'm kidding you? No, I'm not. And you get a copy, and he gets a copy, and the police chief gets a copy, and the state gets a copy, and the ATF gets a copy. Are you kidding me? No, I'm not. And that permit comes with, you have to pay for it, of course, every time. And you have to get one issued by the city in which you live from the police chief, who has the right to say, this is your 3rd permit in the month. I got to wonder, what are you doing with all them pistols? Well, frankly, Chief. It's really none of your doggone business. Oh, well, then I'm going to deny it. Anything you can do about it? Nope. Really? No, I'm telling you. There is nothing you can do about it. So now let's get to concealed carry. Oh, so then you finally obtain your permit to purchase a pistol, and it's only good for 30 days. So you pretty much have to have the gun in mind, and you got to know that you want one and what you want, because there really aren't that many gun stores in New Jersey either, unless you're going to order it on the internet or something. If you live in rural America, you know how many gunsmiths and gun dealers work out of their homes. Can't do that in New Jersey. Not allowed. Has to be a physical commercial location. So then let's assume, for argument's sake, that you've gone through all of that, and now all you want to do is carry. You could be a jewelry dealer who walks around with $1 million a day in a briefcase, and they just couldn't care less. Unless you're, connected politically, or you are some kind of a star, or, Hollywood mogul or something, you can dream on. It doesn't matter. You will be denied. And in this case, someone took it and said, well, let's just take it to the Supreme Court. I have a right to carry a weapon in self-defense. The lawyer behind the case was a guy by the name of Alan Gura, civil rights litigator. He won both Heller and McDonald before the Supreme Court before. Maybe that's why the court wouldn't hear it. Gura explained the reasons that he brought this case called Drake versus Jerigian or Garrigan or something. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. Quote, this is from Alan Gura. We've seen courts rubber stamp just about any kind of law that violates the Second Amendment. Unless the Supreme Court decides to enforce its pronouncements, the Second Amendment will apply only to the extent that some lower courts are willing to honor Supreme Court precedent. Well, by their silence, the federal court is allowing these lower court rulings and the rubber stamping of them to continue. Well, I got to tell you something. The rules are arbitrary and capricious. You're not prohibited from owning a gun or having the right to carry one. And it's another nail in the coffin of the judiciary branch in the tripartite. I'm going to remind you of something. You seem to consider judges as the ultimate arbiters of all constitutional questions. It's a very dangerous doctrine indeed, and one which would place us under the despotism of an oligarchy. And the Constitution has erected no such single tribunal. Need I say more? That was Thomas Jefferson in 1820. He was very clear. He didn't leave anything on the table. There's no room to wiggle. The courts have utterly, completely failed us. We've got, it's not just guns, guys. We've got this net neutrality thing. Twice the courts have denied the FCC the ability to institute net neutrality. 2 previous times. And now they're back for net neutrality part 3. They're determined to push it through because, and the courts have actually called it federal overreach. So where do they get away trying it a third time? I mean, at what point in time do we have to say, listen, any further attempt if you went in and you kept filing the same lawsuit over and over and over again, you know what the court would do? I'm going to tell you what they do. What they do is they say, you are permanently barred from access to this court. Did you know the courts could do that? They do. Go look up the rejection list for when the Supreme Court does their review and determine what they're going to issue certiorari for. Right at the bottom, you'll see a whole list of people that says you are barred from submitting appeals to this court because you have abused the courts, you've abused your privilege to address the court through, arbitrary and capricious cases. I don't know whether they are or not. I don't even care. The point is, if the courts can do that to an individual litigant, why can't they go to the FCC and say, you are forever barred from attempting to do this or anything even remotely similar to it? Why have the courts granted and went to the extraordinary length to approve and legalize something like Obamacare? The state exchanges are failing. We're in a death spiral on this thing. The FBI has announced an investigation into Oregon's Obamacare exchange. $305 million they spent on that. And guess what, folks? They haven't signed up a single insured person. Not one. $305 million. Today, or yesterday, it was announced that Romney Care in Massachusetts is being disbanded. That was the excuse that the administration gave us for how great the whole thing was going to work. Well, look at Romney Care. It works. The courts can't stop Obama from these executive actions or refuse to do so. They say, we don't want to get in the middle of the two other prongs of the tripartite arguing amongst themselves. That is your sole function, to act as an oversight board for the other two. Where do you get off abdicating your responsibility to us and to the Constitution, to the nation, to your sworn oath? The ruling from the Ninth Circuit on why an American student can be ordered not to wear an American flag on Cinco de Mayo Day, not because there's something wrong with that, but because the Hispanic students have threatened violence against those who are wearing an American flag on what they perceive to be their holiday. Are you out of your flipping mind? The court says the risk of injury and the risk of violence is high. So therefore, the school has the right to suspend First Amendment rights for everybody else in favor of a group of people who claim to threaten a terroristic threat of violence. How insane does that get? How a court can rule and call it justice that the rights of students to wear an American flag on their shirt can be stripped and superseded simply because a group threatens violence is insane. I mean, if that were the case, in theory, hypothetically, the religious right could say, if you don't stop abortion, we're going to commit violence on the abortion industry. And according to the courts, that should be enough to end the claimed right to abortion. Is that not the same thing? According to this theory, the aggressor isn't held accountable for their actions and therefore their terroristic threat. They're not held accountable for the violence that ensues because they have acted outside of the law. According to the court, the victims pay the penalty. Where does this, how does any of this justify where the courts are? You know, the creative ruling on Obamacare, this kind of idiocy, that you can strip the rights of how many people, I don't care if it's 1 or 1 million, based on a perceived threat of violence from a group that, quite frankly, we don't even know if they're here legally. I mean, it's absurd enough. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that they're all legal. All the students who are going to court or going to school that day are all legal. Let's assume that none of them are an illegal alien. If they're threatening violence against students who are wearing an American flag shirt on Cinco de Mayo Day, which is not even an American holiday, and you're saying to me that we're going to bow to the pressure of terrorism, because that's what this is. You're saying we're going to bow to the threat of terrorists, and to eliminate violence, we're going to bar you from wearing the shirt of your choice that happens to be the symbol of our nation. Wow. And the courts agree? Yes, they do. Explain that to me. I don't understand it. How's there any justification for that? See, the courts, because they are supposed to be above reproach when we talk about the idea that, you know, Congress is easily compromised, you know, by corruption because they're elected, right? Well, you know, judges on a federal level are not elected, they're appointed. And the whole premise behind that was to eliminate the possibility of corruption so that they didn't have to file for re-election and need money to accomplish that. That was the whole premise. You know, you expect compromise and corruption in Congress. You expect it in the White House and the executive. You don't want it, but you expect it because that's human nature. But justice is supposed to be blind, ideologically pure. Now, look, I don't want to live in a fantastical utopia, and I don't believe that that we should go around with the opinion that is the case, but or will ever be the case. It won't be. We're flawed because of human nature. All of us are, including the judges who sit up there and pontificate to the rest of us. But if that's the best that we can expect, if the best that we can expect is these laws that are on the books that allow civil forfeiture. I mean, I posted an article up here about a guy in Las Vegas who won $50,000 and $60,000. He's driving home from Vegas to California. Wait do you hear the story? He's driving home, and he gets pulled over for doing 3 miles an hour over the limit. Now, he got $10,000 in cashier's checks, and he had $50,000 in cash. And the cops pulled him over, and this is their routine. This is not the only time they've accomplished this. Without charging him with a crime, they didn't even give him a speeding ticket. They seized $50,000 in cash, and they let him go. Perfectly legal, according to the courts. Dan Nagayan, it was the gambler. He was stopped on I-80 in Humboldt County. He was stopped by Deputy Lee Dove for going 3 miles an hour above a posted speed limit. 3. To establish the grounds for the search, the deputy began to claim that he smelled drugs. I just smelled weed. I know I did. I know I smelled weed, said Dove into the dash cam video. So he could establish probable cause. He's a skilled narcotics agent that knows that accusing someone of drug trafficking is all that is required to walk away with their money and their property. The policy that enables him to do this is called civil asset forfeiture. The cop says to the guy, how much money you got? No drugs are found in the guy's search. They search his vehicle. No drugs are found. That was no problem for the deputy. He discovered the $50,000 cash and the $10,000 in cashier's checks. That's not yours, is it? Asked the deputy. That is mine, said Nagayan. Well, I'm seizing it, said the deputy. Nagayan protests that the officer has no right to rob him. But Deputy Dove reminds him that the government theft is legal in a police state. Every day I do this. It's all I do for a living. It's drug interdiction, and I get money. The only reason why you don't have that cash, the only reason why you have that cash is because it's related to some sort of illegal activity. You know it, and I know it. With everybody, that's what I do. Because they don't want the problems or the headaches, so they abandon the money. They take what they've got in their wallet, in this case, your cashier's checks, and they bolt. They told the guy that if he didn't get in his vehicle and drive off, he'd be arrested. The cop said to him, I don't have all day to sit here debating it. Get in the car and leave. Ladies and gentlemen, that's beginning to sound like the sheriff of Nottingham. Motorists, the article goes on, this is on Police State USA. Motorists like Nagayan are essentially accused of criminal activity, but they're never actually charged with a crime. They're then forced to prove their innocence, in many cases, or abandon the money. The expenses of the legal fees make it cost prohibitive to fight back because they just took your $50,000. How would you fight back? And the government agencies that fight you have unlimited resources and they're well-oiled machines. They know exactly how to play this game. Well, this guy, they made a mistake with him. They left him $10,000 in cashier's checks. Why didn't they seize the cashier's checks? Because they couldn't cash those. That would have been fraud. But the cash? Anybody's business. So, this guy Nagayan, he went and dropped $10,000 in cashier's checks to pay an attorney to file a lawsuit. Ultimately, he got his money back. But guess what? The deputy's never lost his job. He's never been fired. In fact, he's never even been reprimanded. The underlying tactic he uses is exactly what is expected from law enforcement on their war on drugs. It's not a war on drugs. It's a war on civilians who they can accuse of involvement in drugs. They found no dope on this guy. He could prove that the money came from a casino, that the cashier's check was made out from the casino. That didn't matter. You see, the Fifth Amendment states, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. The concept of seizing money without any kind of criminal charges is a crime, and it needs to be abolished immediately. But your courts have approved it. They've made it legal. And the truth of the matter is, they are as useless to us. Well, I'm going to save that analogy. They're on public radio. Here's the deal, folks. The courts have completely, utterly, totally abandoned us and abdicated any and all responsibility to the Constitution. And they were the last hope we had of the tripartite resolving themselves. Congress won't do it. The executive definitely won't do it. He's so drunk on his power right now, he can't even walk. And our last great hope in black robes has proven themselves unworthy. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. Have a great day. We'll see you all tomorrow.